Okay, I'm making this for Cheryl and maybe a few other people. I should say it's for a show called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My 60s. But normally I'm terrified of my Oxford papers. I just turned this in. This is a play I wrote. And if you have this link, you must not share it with anyone. It cannot be publicly displayed until my grade comes in about a month. I'm trying to do something with the hair. Anyway, I have written a play and I feel like Lillian Hellman. I've done it before several times, but I love this one. And I may not make a good grade. I'm trying to adjust the phone not to be so horribly frightening with my big neck. It may be impossible. But anyway, I'm trying to cover up my age. Anyway, I have written this play that I am absolutely crazy about. So I'm going to try to do it like a little reader's theater. I'm going to read the script so that I can share it. And like I said, it will be locked. If you have this link, that means you've been highly trusted. Do not betray me by sharing the link. Don't share the link. It has to be locked until about a month, and then after that I can do anything I want to with it. Okay, the name of this is Jack and Anne, and this is, I've written them before that I liked. In fact, but the professors gave me good grades because they said I wrote so well, but they didn't like my characters. I don't care what anybody thinks of this one because I love it, and I think that you will too if you have this link. This is Jack and Anne, a standalone one-act play. The genre is drama. A very unlikely friendship is formed when two deceased writers cross paths in a library in a heavenly Oxford. Cast of characters. Jack, the Irish-born C.S. Lewis, 65 years old, former professor to Oxford and Cambridge. And Anne, the German-born Jewish diarist Anne Frank, 15 years old, who hid for 2 years in an attic in Amsterdam before being captured and dying in the infirmary in the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen. The setting is a library in Oxford, early spring. By the way, the word count is 2,195. If I go 6 more words, then it's kicked out. So if you think it's a little short, it's because I have a word count. Jack and Anne, the setting. 2 open books are turned with the edges of the pages facing the audience and fanned out to cover the stage top to bottom and left to right. The chairs share a table and a reading lamp, and a door leads off stage, house right. It is early afternoon. Jack, wearing trousers and a sweater, sits house left, reading. A lit pipe is on the table to his left. A girl wearing a white shirt, blue plaid skirt, bobby socks, and a blue sweater with a large gold Star of David enters. Biography is painted in large letters down the center of the door as its outside is exposed. She carries a bunch of tulips in one arm and closes the door. We begin with Jack. Anne Frank, how delightful! St. Peter said you'd wander in, but I wasn't sure if you'd be in the biographies or literature. Won't you sit down? How do you know me? And why are you delighted? Oh, I'm C.S. Lewis, but my friends call me Jack. I knew it was you because of your star. I just finished reading your book, and I was hoping to catch you on one of your trips to the library. Anne is startled and raises her voice, stepping backwards toward the door. Catch me? Oh, dear, no, please, don't be alarmed. I mean to say I was hoping to meet up with you, and, well, here you are. Well, aren't you concerned I'm a Jew? goodness. No, I love it when Jewish people show up. Well, my wife Joy is Jewish. Anne steps back toward the empty wingback chair. Did she go through the troubles of my time and survive? She must be strong. Oh no, she was an American I met after the war. She had written me about my books, and we became friends. He reaches for his pipe and he puffs on it. Anne, sitting down and laying her tulips on the table between them, it must have been nice to have found your true love and been married. At one time I thought I loved Peter. I kissed him. He was sweet, but I had a crush on an older fellow that worked for my father. Peter was just a puppy love. Well, setting her book on the table and then resting his pipe on it. Oh, there are all kinds of love. A person can love more than once, you know, Anne. Loves are all quite different, but all worthwhile. Peter was a beautiful season in your life. He gave your heart a safe spot to land. And that's a love of a sort. And quite legitimate. What makes you think you know so much about Peter? Went a loud pretend whisper across the table. I read your diary, remember? Oh. Oh yes, it's so embarrassing. I always meant to edit it. I can explain everything. Oh, you've nothing to explain, dear. You're a very smart girl with a generous heart and an honest pen. It's a winning combination, and you shouldn't apologize for your writer's voice. Your writing may not have been published the way you imagined, but it's one of the best sellers ever. And it brought healing to millions who struggled to reconcile the harshness of this world with the beauty of mankind. Your work is not only good, but very constructive. Well, absently running her fingers over her Star of David, Anne continues, well, it's hard for me. But I decided my writing should be a force for good. I had hours during those days of silence to mull over the ideas in my head. I always came back to how safe I felt behind those books, and how kind our helpers were to share their rations and to risk their own freedom to keep us safe. She picked up a tulip and cradled it in her hands. When I felt myself feeling angry and giving into cynicism, I closed my eyes and remembered the people of Amsterdam. I wish you could have seen them during the occupation. When the day came that all Jews were required to wear a Star of David on our clothing, we were afraid to leave the house. But when we did, absolutely everyone on the street was wearing a big, bold, gold star on their clothing, just like ours. Sorry. They were wearing a big, bold star on their clothing, just like ours. Christians, Jews, atheists, believers, and non-believers, all of them were wearing Stars of David and carrying tulips. It was as if they had wrapped us in a blanket of protection and goodwill. The Nazis had to check records to really know who was a Jew and who wasn't. It brought us a little time, and it gave us moral support. I never felt alone after that, not really. She closed her eyes and caressed her cheek with a tulip. And Jack stands up. That's beautiful, Anne. The people of Amsterdam gave you a foretaste of heaven, and apparently it served you well. You were brave until the end and loyal. And now you are where you will never have to worry again. Or go hungry. Now let's put our minds on the happiness we have here and now. I have a little surprise for you. Jack goes around the large book behind his chair to return with a service cart full of trays of sandwiches and biscuit tins and 3 coffee pots. 3 teapots. Anne jumps up, squealing with delight and examining the treats. "Oh, Jack, look at all that food. Where did you get all this?" Well, Joy had a hunch you'd be hungry. She made these little sandwiches and bought the strawberry tarts. But my favorite are those in the biscuit tins. My brother Warnie, he keeps me supplied. He enjoys a trip to London every now and then, and he stops by Covent Garden to the Crabtree in Evelyn, and he grabs me these tins of these lemon biscuits and jars of lemon curd. He takes a lemon biscuit from the tin and he smears it with the curd and covering it, and he hands it to her. Biting into this treat, she flings her arms wide and falls back on the chair. "That is to die for. Oh my goodness, Jack." Filling a plate with a bit of everything and handing it to her. "It's all good. Enjoy it. You'll want something to wash it down with, though. So, do you prefer coffee or tea or hot cocoa?" "Well, the movie stars all drink coffee after dinner, so I suppose that we should save that for later. And I've missed hot chocolate, but these fruit flavors really go best with tea." Accepting a cup of tea that Jack holds out to her. "Thank you. I'm sorry I'm talking with my mouth full and I'm practically inhaling this food. There'll be nothing left for you." "Remember, Anne, it's heaven. There's always more." Swallowing a big bite and draining her teacup. "It is indeed heaven, Jack. I must slow down or I'll make myself sick." Swallowing a big bite. Then Jack, over his teacup, inclines toward her chair. "You'll never be sick again, ever." And then he turns aside and he wipes a tear. She sets down her cup and offers him her full attention. "So, Jack, why did you pick this Oxford for your heaven?" Well, one would imagine it was the libraries, or the architecture, or maybe even the scholars that haunt the place, right? Well, truly, it's heaven to me because this is where I first saw Joy. She lit up my world. She waltzed into the Randolph and called out my name. I almost died. She always thought it embarrassed me when she did something seemingly brash or a very un-British thing with her American ways. But the truth was, I was smitten by her. The first time she looked me straight in the eye and peered into my soul, I couldn't take my eyes off her. I tried to cover up my reaction and let her think that I thought she was rude. But the truth is that if I was ever embarrassed, it was because of the feeling that I was losing control. Well, where is Joy now, Jack? Is she in heaven? Well, maybe I should ask you if Oxford is her kind of heaven. Jack tilts back his head and roars with laughter. Ah! Forgive me for laughing, but if you knew how hard it was for her the first time she came here, she was definitely not the typical Oxford resident. She actually would fire warning shots into the trees above the boys who wandered onto my property hunting rabbits. They were catching our rabbits and she was mortified. My Joy is a woman of passion. If Oxford's her kind of heaven, though, it's because I'm here. At the moment, she's off with the script writers, or perhaps down by the Charwell hanging out with the poets. She was a house scriptwriter out in Hollywood, you know, for a while. And after that, before that, she was an editor. But mainly, she's a poet. Well, now that doesn't surprise me about the shooting. Because, well, when we lived in Frankfurt, our home was in the Poets' Quarter. And there were Jewish and non-Jewish neighbors of all kinds of personalities. It was quite dynamic. So she writes poetry, and you write books. Well, I used to. But for me, heaven is camaraderie. I like the knowing even as you have been known aspect of heaven. Some say it's understanding even as you have been understood. I like that aspect of heaven. There's no fear of another. Your hearts are safe and your minds, and everybody's friends. I like just being with people. Well, have you ever wondered why some of us lived short lives, Jack, and others lived longer? I mean, you had a long life, but you lost your love. And I never knew romantic life, and I died young. Picking up a tulip and turning it in his hands. I can only guess, but it seems to me that you and Joy had life pretty well figured out. You, Anne, had a perspective at 15 that I didn't have until I was an old man. I think I had to go on living without Joy because I had just begun to understand life. She taught me so much, and I had to process it. I didn't really live life fully until Joy came along. And I had some learning and some living left to do. I wasn't ready for this heaven, or any heaven for that matter. Well, I can't imagine that I had life figured out at 15. Love, my friend, you had love. Amid the worst sort of loss and persecution, you had the ability to find love and hope. And that's something Joy tried to teach me, but it took me years to process it. But I never accomplished any of my dreams, Jack. Well, now you wanted to go on living even after you were gone? Well, your legacy is massive. A museum, untold plays and books written about you, millions and millions of readers, generation to generation. And here you are now, definitely living on after you were gone from all that sorrow and pain and the disappointments of humanity. It's extraordinary, really. So much accomplished by 15. And now here you are on the streets of Oxford, laying the tulip down and pouring in another cup of tea. By the way, why did you choose this Oxford for your heaven? Did you always want to be in that other Oxford? Really, Jack? It was the sky. The blue sky. All I had in the world, beyond the safety of our book-covered stairway, was a little patch of blue I could see out a tiny window. When they took us, I never saw the sky again for all the looking down and looking back over my shoulder. And at Bergen-Belsen, in the infirmary, there were no windows, and there wasn't even a light. In the cities, the buildings block the sky, but in Oxford, the whole sky is open. And the buildings, their beautiful spires, are ever pointing to the sky. standing up to set their cups on the cart and offer her his hand. Well, let's go have a stroll under that stunning blue sky. I'm meeting Joy for dinner. You come too. She always brings other riders. Anne takes his hand and she rises to walk with him toward the door. I wish I were a writer. I'd love to be immersed in a world of authors. It was always my dream, you know. Now, Anne, have you ever thought of taking a course from Oxford? Maybe taking a creative writing course from Oxford? They have a splendid program. But it's so very far from this Oxford to that Oxford that I can't imagine anyone in having participate. Oh, well, now, Anne. Oxford University is the ultimate for distance learning. And they have this wonderful undergrad diploma in creative writing. It's called a hybrid cohort. And I think you'd be just right for it. Opening to the backstage of Blue Sky. There's a summer session in progress right now. We'll stop by the Radcliffe and go to the top. St. Peter uses it like a child's viewmaster. And we'll dial into Ruley House and take a look. Anne stepping into the blue. That sounds wonderful. Jack stepping into the blue and pulling the door shut. It'll be heaven. And the stage fades to black. Now, thank you for listening to my overly enthusiastic production of Anne and Jack. Or maybe it's Jack and Anne. And I have to admit, I said Jack and Anne because it opens with Jack. He's the first person to speak. But then also I have to just admit it was a little John Cougar. It's the American in me. It always comes out. I always have to have a little nod to the American. Just a little ditty about Jack and Diane. So it's a little ditty about Jack and Anne. Two writers who've gone to heaven in the Oxford land. So I have the little song, then I have to go with that. But anyway, thank you for sharing my fabulous first one-act play, one that I'd love to see on stage. I actually love it. So I had to try it. Thank you, and good night.